I was not accurate. Hello, good welcome. Today we are doing a special edition of our live streams, and because there is a lot of news going on. Obviously, we've had the death of Queen Elizabeth last week, and the repercussions and all the things that are coming along with the national period of mourning are starting to come out. So we've got lots to talk about today. I'm joined by my colleague Steph Braun. Both of us will be working on the Queen's funeral, so we will be bringing that coverage live to you, while everybody else enjoys the bank holiday. Apart from that, there's a lot of other things to discuss. So, what's the kind of like our front page today was talking about how has the UK gone mad? So, Steph, what is the one that you've seen that you think that's crazy? Why is that being paused so far?
In terms of closures, there's just been loads of stuff. I think it's slightly crazy that there's going to be no bin collections on the day. Not sure why that's a service that needs to stop. I wasn't too surprised at the school closures. Whether that, again, that's up to debate whether that's necessary. But it's not. That's not one I was too surprised about. But yeah, I think the bin collections and things like centre parks and things like that, that's closing as well. All the National Trust venues and Historic Scotland venues and things like that. It just seems like everything is going to shut down basically, and whether that is really needed in some respects is questionable, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, so the funeral is Monday, the 18th, 19th, whichever next Monday it is. Hold on.
19th, yeah.
19th, yeah. Terrible with dates. I always usually have them written down. Yeah, so that's the funeral. And, that is the day where everything is essentially going to shut down. The schools, a lot of them in Scotland already had the day booked off because of bank holidays that they already have. It's September weekend. Some of them celebrate it that weekend, and some of them have in-service days. So a lot were going to be shut already, but, it looks like the Scottish Government have advised them all to close. So that's all schools and all council-run nurseries. So private nurseries and things like that, they're going to make that decision on their own basis. I think the wildest one that we've seen this afternoon is that there are rumours that food banks are going to
I was just going to say, have we got confirmation on the food banks at all?
We have. The Trussell Trust said to our colleague Craig, who's looking at this at the moment, that it's up to individual food banks to decide whether or not they close. So there is one in Wimbledon that everybody on Twitter has been sharing and kind of reacting like, this is not a good thing to do on that day. But I believe, although not 100% sure, that food banks do usually close on bank holidays. So we're getting that confirmed at the moment. But yeah, so that is probably the craziest one that I think I've seen.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that if that is the case, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, people are still going to be in need on that day. They're still going to need to eat. So yeah, we're getting a lot of things closed down as well.
We've also had a story about funerals being cancelled as well.
Yes, across
other people's funerals being cancelled on that day, which that's a huge inconvenience to families who are mourning their loved ones at this time, and it just seems like all the focus is being shifted to the royal family and the death of the Queen, and it's really up for debate as to whether all this is necessary and all this is right, really, because funerals is a huge one. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Abby.
Yeah, well, I mean, also one of our colleagues pointed out that, for Muslims and for people of the Jewish faith, that they usually have to bury their dead within the first 24 hours. So for people who die the day before the Queen's funeral, what does that mean for them? It's kind of, I don't know how you feel about this, but it does feel like the coverage has been non-stop. It's just all we're hearing about. Like everything else has fallen by the wayside. We're in the middle of an energy crisis, a cost of living crisis. We've got a lot of stuff going on that needs to be dealt with and that the government should be coping with. But every parliament in the UK has been shut down for this period of mourning. So we have no politics until after the funeral is passed. So that is essentially being every bit of politics. No bills can be passed. So the rent freeze that was on the table for the Scottish Parliament, that they were wanting to do that as soon as possible, that's going to have to wait now. Like all these things that were going to be up, it's also going to set the Parliament back by 2 weeks as well when it actually does get back to speed. So, it's like it is going to have a massive impact in the long run. It's going to set a lot back, and we're heading very fast into winter when people's bills are about to go up. And, you know, the energy policy, I've actually an analysis coming on this later from me, and the energy policy from the UK government just completely fell flat and was totally overshadowed by all the coverage of the Queen's death, and then going into King Charles being proclaimed across the country as the new king. So that's just taken over. That's literally all the headlines that got. Every front page I've seen since it happened, it's had a royal on it, and all this other stuff is completely fallen by the wayside. It's just I'd say that's the most concerning bit for me, that the parliaments have stopped and that politics has stopped, because, you know, people's lives haven't stopped. We still have to work, still have bills to pay, all that stuff to do, you know.
Yeah, I think for 2 or 3 days, I think there was an acceptance generally that, you know, this was going to be, you know, how coverage was. You know, the Queen's been reigning for 70 years. Granted, there was going to be a huge amount of coverage about it, but I think we're moving into kind of day 5, 6 now, and people are starting to feel as if this is, you know, channels are wiped out with coverage. And I think people are starting to wonder what else is going on. You know, we just had, like you just said, we had, you know, a huge energy bill announcement just before the Queen died, and people are starting to wonder, you know, what's happening.
2.5 hours before the announcement of the Queen died came out. That came out at 4 o'clock, and the announcement of the Queen's death came out at 6:30. So
yeah.
That was literally how quick it was.
Yeah, it was so quick. So I think people are really starting to wonder what else is going on, but also discussions are starting to strike up about the future of the monarchy, the Queen's legacy, things like that. We saw a protest outside St Giles Cathedral today, which was quite you know, quite eye-catching. There were a number of people stood in a line near St Giles Cathedral holding a white banner and blank pieces of paper. In a sort of freedom of speech demonstration. For those of you that, most people I'm sure will have seen it, there was a barrister who went out in London and held up a blank piece of paper and was allegedly told that if he wrote anything anti-monarchy on it, such as "not my king," he would have been arrested. Apparently he was told that by police. So this was what inspired this statement these protesters were making outside of St Giles. So, and I think that I spoke to one of the protesters that was there, and I think there was a feeling that, yes, of course, you know, people are allowed to mourn the Queen. People, you know, and she was an important lady to a lot of people, but, you know, we've got to talk about the future, and people can't be stopped from doing that. And you know, some of these arrests that have been made over the past few days, I think people have felt they don't even need police attention. Rather, you know,
I mean, they're breach of the peace charges as well. They're very minor charges that are being made, but we can't talk about them because they've been charged, which is the infuriating part. But, you know, a lot of it is on our website at the moment, because there have been a few arrests, a couple in Edinburgh, one in Aberdeen related to eggs, I believe, and there's also been some in Oxford and London, as you said, the one in the protester who got the blank sign. There was somebody outside of the gates that, I think it was, said "not my king" or something like that.
Yeah, there was an incident, I think. Yeah,
and that's where that came from, where the people
he asked about it. Yeah,
but yeah, so this is just one of those things where, you know, let's be brutally honest. King Charles is not as popular as his mother was, particularly north of the border. So yeah, there are questions that have to be answered about, you know, why this has been rushed through, why on Sunday suddenly there were, you know, massive ceremonies in every town and country across, you know, Scotland and the UK, proclaiming him as king without us having a say in it. You know, this is meant to be a democratic nation, and he has now just been swiftly moved into our head of state, you know, just hereditary, and that's it. And so I do think that whatever your views on the monarchy are, and everybody is allowed to have those, totally respect that, we should still be able to have a conversation about it. You know, this has been long coming. The monarchy have known for a long time that when he becomes king, there's going to be a bit of an issue, because he's not as popular as everybody else for a lot of reasons, which I'm not going to go into details about, but, you know, he just doesn't.
I think there needs to be a separation as well between the fact that, yes, the Queen has died, but there is also that is separate from the fact that we now have a new king, you know, who we're going to have, you know, for who knows how long for, but you know, it's going to be a while, and we need to talk about, we should be allowed to talk about the future and the future of the state and everything like that, and that's a separate issue to the Queen's death. And I fear that they've been molded into one. So when protesters are standing outside where the Queen's coffin is being held, they're not protesting the fact that people are mourning the Queen. They're talking about the future, and the two are just kind of getting a bit murky, I think.
Yeah, because obviously people were shouting, it's free speech and stuff in the crowds when some of them were protested, and they were obviously people were there to mourn as well. So it is splitting opinion. But yeah, I do think you're right. There is that little bit of conflation between the Queen's death and King Charles being just ascended to the throne. And there are a lot of Republicans in Scotland and across the UK who just don't agree with the monarchy whatsoever. So yeah, it's a very tense time that I think this story is just going to rumble on for a long time to come. But back to the bank holiday on Monday, our colleague Judith Duffy has spent her day trying to work out what's closing, I think, in every council area in Scotland. And that list will be going live in 45 minutes at 6 p.m, which you're all more than welcome to read. I think she's managed to break it down by, every single area, what's closing, what shops are closing, what schools are closing, what historical places are closing. Because did you not have a story earlier about Bannockburn's closed, like the area at Bannockburn?
Yeah, that's one of the National Trust sites. So the Visitor Centre and the experience they have there will be closed. But that's kind of in line with, like I say, Historic Scotland are shutting their venues as well. But yeah, I saw cinemas were closing as well. Some cinemas, I think it might vary in terms of location and chain. But yeah, that's another thing that's closing. I think some of the cinemas are showing the Queen's funeral as well instead.
Yeah, for free. It just seems like a weird thing to do. But anyway, there was another one. Centre Parks
on a big screen. It's happening apparently. So
I know the Centre Parks one is quite possibly the funniest one to me that I've seen today so far. Though, so Centre Parks, there aren't any in Scotland, which is why I haven't covered that. No. Bring it up because it's funny. So they are closing on the day of the funeral, but they're kicking out for that 24 hours of the funeral. They're kicking out the people that have holiday booked there. So like, I don't know what they expect them to do on that one day. Like, do they book a hotel somewhere else? Could they not just let them stay there? I don't understand why they've decided to put them out for that whole 24 hours. Like, I understand that they might not have staff on site, but surely you can let them stay and bring their own food in or something, Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very funny one. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
It does seem a bit mad. We've got plenty of stories on our website about all the closures that are going on. Like we say, Judith is going to take you through all of it, and when that goes up around 6. But is that us for now, Abby?
I think so. I mean, the only other thing that we could really talk about is the Labour MPs. Which I think
this is an interesting one.
Yeah, so Labour MPs have been told not to post anything on social media or do any appearances on general media that aren't related to the Queen's death or exactly the lines that Labour HQ have put for them. So like they've been told this is what you're allowed to say and this is only where you're allowed to say it and to not post on social media. What do you think about that one, Steph? Do you think that's the right thing for them to do?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Yeah, really, really tough. I don't really know what to say about it. It's
right. I just find it interesting.
I suppose that they want to be careful about anybody saying anything in sort of inflammatory at this time, but at the same time, again, people are allowed to have their own views. So it's a tough one. I think it's possibly a bit much, but
yeah, I think it might backfire. You know how they did the same thing with the RMT strikes, and then Sam
this is what I was thinking. Yeah, exactly. So
and then Sam Tarry did it anyway, and then they sacked him off the front bench. But then after that, when Lisa Nandy and stuff did it, they stopped sacking them because they all started doing it. So it's another one of those Labour diktats. I think that we'll see if they stick to it, but it's not a surprise. All the political parties have suspended campaigning. The SNP have. Not heard anything from anybody over the past kind of couple of days. It's just all the news is about Queen's death and King Charles being proclaimed the new monarch. So yeah, we have definitely got a lot of news coming for you over the next week. We'll have lots of coverage on all the things going around this and what it means for people living in Scotland and how it's going to affect you, because obviously that is one of the most important points. And as we said, very key article coming at 6 o'clock from Judith Duffy about all the closures if you're wanting to see how this is going to play out over the next week. But thank you very much for tuning in, and any questions, drop them in the comments and we can let you know.
Thanks, everyone.